Homework. What's up, Julie? How did you got? You guys take the language arts test one yet?
No, we're still working on it. We started it today.
Hard, easy, what?
I'm terrible at reading.
Yeah, but is it hard, easy?
The writing one?
Yeah, you didn't put much effort in the math one.
Did I put a lot of effort?
I was like having really bad withdrawal symptoms, so everything was fuzzy, and I was like, what is going on?
From what?
All right, here we
Are all
go.
these tests running toward a grade?
Julie, what's up?
Are all these tests that we've got to take counted for a grade?
No.
Oh.
Okay, so Riley, another smart girl here, already figured out what the heck's going on here. I'm not collecting your homework. Guess why?
Why?
You're a good
Did you
teacher.
love
Because
what
odds.
you
Is she the only smart girl in here?
The odds. You can
Because-
just see the answers in the back.
Because you couldn't see the odds in the book.
Really? She's the only
We're
smart
going
girl
to
in here?
finish it. We only did the first half. With, you know how we only did these parts of it?
Tonight it's
Now
going
we're
to say
to go
solve
all
the
way
equation. So what do you have to do in order to solve the equation? You got to find a common denominator. You got to find the extraneous solution. So use what's in front of you to finish tonight's homework. I will collect it tomorrow, and it counts as one, even though it's already in the grade book as 2 assignments.
we
It's
gonna
1
check it
page
though?
for 2 assignments.
That's cool.
So any questions though on finding the common denominators and extraneous solutions? We're simply going to use that. It's going to be not a super quick class, but you're going to use that in order to answer the questions tonight. So tonight the answer is do 7 through 20 and then solve them.
Well, ignore directions. What's that?
That was last night. Right? Okay.
Look, can I pass the
Okay.
papers?
If there are no questions on how to find the common denominators, we'll just get started.
Can we check it?
Can I pass the paper?
So if we got it right,
Yeah, we're gonna hold off on that until tomorrow.
sadness.
Okay, I
All right.
really understand.
So here's your homework. Guess what it says?
Oh!
It's the same homework. It's just now you're gonna do it. But you're gonna need this sheet of paper that you did last night for homework in order to do the work. All right. I do need to pass this.
Wait, can I do it?
What do you think of exercise in front of What's the extra?
You could have told me no instead of ignoring me.
You said can I?
What's it called? The extra number?
Extraneous solution. We're gonna go over that again.
Some of this.
All right. So I believe I started off yesterday's lecture and I said something to the effect of, okay, we're doing something somewhat complicated, but since we already had chapter 6, we've already added fractions before, subtract, multiply, and divide that have polynomial numerators, denominators. So we've seen a little bit about this. What we learned in this chapter is we have this technique, only if you have an equation that we can do something called clear the fraction. And clearing the fraction just makes your life a whole lot easier to solve the equation. You're not dealing with what we did in chapter 6. We were forced to in 6 because they weren't equations, they were expressions. We had to get a common denominator. We had to make common denominators, but now we have an equation. So we have the option, and it is an option. It's the best option, the easiest thing, is that the heck with the fraction, let's just get rid of the fraction. In order to get rid of the fraction, you first still have to find a common denominator. And then you multiply everything by the common denominator. You'll see lots of things cancel out. The fraction cancels out, and you're just left with a nice, I'm going to say simple equation to solve. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, so you're going to take what you did last night for homework, which is when you found the common denominator and extraneous solution, and you're going to finish the problem. Yes. Where?
The nurse's office, I need ice.
Go ahead. All right, last class, we dealt with an equation where almost everything, in this case it is a fraction, right? The difference between that and the previous class, in the previous class, we had nothing but integers in the bottom. We found a common denominator, included the fraction. Okay? Now we have variables and sometimes variable expressions and the denominator, the technique is still the same. We get a common denominator, we multiply everything by the common denominator, it gets rid of the fractions. Today we solve. We also yesterday learned about this thing called extraneous solutions, is that we're going to have to figure out what can x not be before we find out what it can be. All right, so to clear the fraction, remember, we find a common denominator, we multiply everything by the common denominator, and then we solve the equation, right? Our one extra step because of this class is because you have variables in the denominator, we have to make sure that we tell our readers of our work is that it cannot be this number. And I said yesterday, when you get to Algebra 2, you start graphing these things, you're going to find out there is a hole in the graph right there at that extraneous solution. Literally, like you have a graph, makes a pretty little picture, and then there's literally a hole. The graph stops, and it starts back up again on the other side of the hole. When you're finding the extraneous solutions, you're finding these things called holes. All right. Example, right? What can x not be here? X can't be 0. That's an easiest one, right? X cannot be 0. This was your homework last night. When you have a variable expression, well, the idea is you take that entire expression, 2x plus 4, set it equal to 0, and find out what that would give you. If you set 2x plus 4 equal to 0, solve that, right? You have found the number that it cannot be. If x was -2, if you solve this whole thing, hint, 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 it turns out you might solve it and find out that is the solution. You find out that it can't be the solution because x can't be -2. 2 times -2 is -4, and -4 plus 4 is 0. Okay, so that's the extraneous solution. The second thing we did yesterday that you had for homework is we found common denominators. They come in 2 flavors, one like this, one like this. When it's just a variable all by itself and numbers, we find the common denominator of the number, which is, same one we did yesterday. 4 and 12, the common denominator is 12, and then we attach x to it. Now, just so you know, we really attach the highest power of x. In this case, there's only 1, so 12x. Okay, so that is how you find that one. On the ones that have variable expression, I guess it's just as easy. We still look at just the numbers, 12, and then we multiply that answer for this times that. Now, here's the kicker today. You're going to see sometimes we have more than one of these. You might have seen that last night for homework. You don't actually multiply. You say multiply. You just squeeze them together. If you actually multiply them, then you got to factor it before you cancel. So we're not going to actually do the multiplication.
So we just squeeze them together.
We just squeeze them together. We take the x minus 2,
And x2.
put parentheses around it, and a 12.
12.
Right. So 12 times the quantity x minus 2. That's what you had last night for homework. Okay. So we had 12x for this one. I'm doing this very quickly. And for this one, we had 12 times the quantity, x minus 2. Okay. That's it. Now you know LCD. Now you know extraneous solutions. Now we can solve the equation. I did have just a quick one. You want to try this real quick, box 1? Just tell me the LCD of both of these and the extraneous solutions. Hold on. So this is kind of like just a review of last night's homework. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Okay, cool. It's that quick, right? To solve it, a little bit more work, but to find the common denominator, extraneous solution, we're not talking about 20 minutes of work. We're talking about literally a couple seconds. First one.
10x. And
Whoa. First one, 10x, yes?
Yep.
Yep, because 2 goes into 10, 10 goes into 10. And
extraneous solution,
the extraneous solution is
0.
0. Okay? Harley, you got the second one? And the extraneous solution is? Okay. That's pretty much it. If you can do that, you can do tonight's homework because all we're going to do is apply this to what we did before. Now, those are nice, easy words to say. The execution of it is messy. You are going to fill up on some of these that much of work, right? To do all this canceling stuff. So this can get really messy. Don't try to, I'll just squeeze it in there. You'll probably forget something. Give yourself as much space as necessary.
So do you actually want us to solve it?
Today, we're going to solve it. So let's watch one. Okay. So the steps for doing it don't change. We still find the common denominator. We multiply everything by the common denominator, and then we solve. The nice thing about this is you're going to get rid of the fraction. It's going to look a whole lot nicer. You'll be in a much more comfortable place to be to solve the equation. We still have to have, it says step 1, 2, 3, 3. Should say 4 right there. Step 4 is we got to include the extraneous solution in our answer. So we'll say something like, well, x equals 5 and it cannot be 0 or whatever the extraneous solution was. All right, so here we go. An easy one before. It's the same one we've been looking at for the last 2 days. Tristan, what's the common denominator?
3, sir. 3. Sorry.
What do both of these numbers go into? They do go into 24. Is that the least common denominator?
No.
And then we attach whatever variable to the highest power. So common denominator, step 1, you don't need to write it down, like I made you do it last night for homework, but you have to remember that the common denominator is 12. I wrote it down. You don't have to actually write down. What you need to do now is don't squeeze that in how it's written on your paper. Rewrite the whole darn thing. So maybe you wait until you find the common denominator before you write the problem down. I just give yourself lots of space. Okay? You see how much space I gave myself? I hate it when some kid, and like on a test, I'll give this for the test, and I'll see some kid write 12x, and they're like, it just takes up too much space. They can't even see what they're doing, right? And especially if you have bad handwriting like I do, you get into problem because you can't even see what you wrote. So you give yourself plenty of space. I took the first fraction, I multiplied by 12x minus
Couldn't you
the
just do it in
second
your head?
fraction times 12x equals the third fraction times 12x. Now we look at it and we see what cancels. Hey, Aiden, what cancels here?
Well,
What is the same on the top and the bottom? What cancels? The x's cancel on that first one. Cool. So you're left with 12 times 3. 12 times 3 is
36.
a number, right? That's not a fraction. Oh, I did some canceling here. Nothing cancels here, but we can do some reducing. But over here, what cancels? Okay.
Oh.
Now, I'm kind of doing them in the haphazard order right here. Try to do them in order. So this right here would turn into minus 12 over 4 reduces to times x. If you're going to make a mistake, guess what your mistake will be? You'll somehow this will turn to a positive.
What if it doesn't equal the other side?
It's not going to look like it equals the other side
No,
until
I
we
mean,
solve
like,
it.
what if you reduce it all the way and it's like 6 equals 8 or something?
It's not. You're not going to lose an x. You're always going to have an x if you do it correctly. This side, what are we left with?
1x. 1
Okay. Okay. Now we're at a. Hey, look at what we're at. That ugly mess right there turned into this. What?
So I thought you had to turn the denominator, like you would put 12x under each one and then.
So she is confusing what we did in middle school, which is when we add fractions, what do we do?
You have to make a
You got to make common denominators. That means you get 3 fractions. They all have the same common denominator. And you add them with what we do in high school, which is we hate fractions. So what do? We get rid of them. And that was the whole purpose.
Oh, okay.
Now, just remember, this is only true because we can only do this because it's an equation. If that was the fraction, this was chapter 6, guess what? And you did it, guess what you did? Exactly what she said. Don't we have to get common denominators and keep the denominator? Yeah, you do. But if it's an equation, isn't this nicer? It's worth this work, so you have to deal with that crud up there. All right, go ahead, Rowan. What are we doing now? What are we doing? What are we going to do? Next step.
Add 3x.
Perfect. That'll give me 4x.
Where's the brand new?
Therefore, x equals?
Like a number.
I agree. So x equals, you're done. Now, okay, for an algebra problem, this is not an easy one, right? But it's, of the ones we're doing, it is the easiest one, okay? You can't give this to an 8th grader and expect them to do that. They don't know what to do.
But what if they're really smart?
I don't care how smart they are. No 8th grader is going to do this unless they've been taught this. No 8th grader that's smart knows that you can get rid of the fraction, okay? All right. By the way, we always have that last step of step 3, and it's really step 4 of extraneous solution. What was the extraneous solution? 0. Did we find out that x was 0? This is the real reason that you find the extraneous solution, because you could potentially find out that you got one of the extraneous solutions. This will happen when we start doing parabolas, x squared. Doesn't happen right now. This is why they kind of get you in the habit of finding the extraneous solutions. Because eventually we're going to be solving for parabolas and we will get two answers, and one of them might be an extraneous
Is
solution.
that it? That's the whole class?
We're just going to do more complicated ones.
Oh.
Okay. All right, box 3. It says Landon didn't write down a single, or Rylan didn't write down a single thing. I bet
Neither of them were done.
that's probably true, right? Rylan, common denominator, what is it?
The common denominator is 9.
Times,
I don't know.
did you find it before Rylan found it? No. 9 times 3 minus x.
3.
Okay, that's not that hard. We're going to give ourselves lots of space when we rewrite this. Don't try to squeeze that next to both of them, right? Write the whole thing with lots of space. Agreed, and I understand. Oh, I said this is an easy one. We're going to get that long, right? That's what this is, the power of all of this. That's why we do this, is because things cancel. We're just left with a non-fraction. Chris, on that first fraction, what cancels?
3 negative.
Just-
3 in the x. 3 in the negative x.
How about you just say 3 minus x?
3 minus x. Those
Okay.
things right there.
Those things right there cancel. And on the other fraction, what cancels?
9.
Good job. Now, some kids will do this step, not rewrite. They will do the distributive property. Hey, can everybody see that we're left with a 9 times 2 minus x? Myself included. Most kids will immediately do the distributive property. Instead of rewriting it, distributive property. Do
Yeah.
it.
Wait, on that one?
Yeah.
9 times 3, right? Oh, okay. 18, right?
Keep talking.
So that's 18 minus 9x.
And on the other side,
Of that. Or that.
we're done with that one. Now we're doing this one.
4, 12. So 12 minus 4x.
So I give you that as a treat because guess what I did? I didn't do the distributive property. So for those of you that are like, oh, this is too much work, well, there's your treat. Do we need to write this step?
No.
You can if you want, but if you don't want to, you can do what Tristan just did. I mean, he skipped that step. If you get into a problem, it's because you got sloppy handwriting and your slashes, you can't read what it goes through, right? You don't pay attention. Now, you can certainly drop negatives, right? That can happen. But eventually, we just get it down to here. All right, Kylie, what are we moving? The negative 9x or the negative 4x? Which one's smaller? So we're going to add 9x to both sides. We add 9x to both sides. That's going to give me, we add 9x to both sides. That's going to give me, Haley, not negative 5. We added 9 to both sides. So maybe some of you shouldn't skip the step of what I just did, and maybe you want to write plus 9x plus 9x. I will leave that up to you to decide whether you need to do that or not. By the time you get this far into Algebra 1, we're not arguing about what you're adding or subtracting to both sides. We might be arguing of whether you need to write the step because you can't do it in your head. If I wrote plus 9x, you probably would have, a few of you made that mistake. Okay, can you solve it from there? And we eventually in algebra and going forward, we reach a step where we're like, oh, okay, the answer is obvious. Like once we get here, it's like, oh yeah, I can get that answer. It's like the rest of the work, I'm not careful what I'm saying here. It's not that it's not important, it's just like we've done the hard work. Once we get to here, oh yeah, there's an answer. Now you still have to get to your answer. But the rest of it is pretty straightforward. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you can still get an ugly answer.
Will we get any
Not where we're at right now. Not in this chapter. Okay. Okay. Extraneous solution is what can x not be? 3. Did we find out that x was 3? No. So we're good to go. So x can't be 3, but it wasn't 3. It was 6/5. The only thing that's going to change between the previous two problems, the last one and this one, maybe there's another extra thing added or subtracted to it, but the process stays the same. What happens is this winds up being that long, but it's the same darn process. Anybody lost on what we're doing? Yeah.
So are we going to, for our answer, are we gonna put the extraneous solution with the?
Well, since you already did it last night, I'll leave it up to you whether you rewrite it again, right? If you look in the back of the book, it's going to say x is equal to 6/5 and x cannot be 3. All right, box 4. Common denominator? 2 and 4 would be 4a. Okay, so 4a is your common denominator. Could you use 8a?
Yeah.
Could you use 8a squared? You could. A goes in 8, but it's dumb, right? It's more work than what you need to do. It's like saying 2 and 5. What's the common denominator of 2 and 5?
60.
It's like saying 60. That literally was the number I was thinking too. Okay.
Weird.
All right, so 4a is the better common denominator. Give yourself room. Expand this so that you have room to write 4a times everything. Tracking, Nathan? It's an army thing. They just say, are you tracking? Are you tracking? Are you tracking? It just means,
I thought you said Shrek.
I thought you said Shrek and
You
Nathan.
Shreking, Nathan?
what does that even mean?
No clue.
Wait, okay, what does like Shrek stand for?
Shrek.
Destruction and kind of nice, but like very sad, but
Swamp.
lonely.
Crummy Scottish accent? I don't know.
Swamp.
Crud.
An onion.
Just crud.
Mr. What's his face used to get ticked off when I would bring that up because he said, "Oh, that's the worst accent I've ever heard in my
Mr.
life."
Graham.
You Canadians should not fake the accents. All right, what cancels? First one?
Okay.
Okay, the A's cancel. Now, I mean, some people argue about what do you mean by cancel. I mean, literally, what goes away, right? The A's go away. The A's go away. The 4's go away. Now, you're still left with some math to do. So 4 times 9 divided by 2 is?
Number 9.
You want to see the easier way of doing it? Do the division first before you do multiplication. 4 divided by 2 is?
2.
Times 9. 4 times 5.
20.
Guess what your mistake will be?
Subtraction.
You'll forget that it says subtract. And that equals, this is a ridiculously easy one because it's just minus a. All right. Do you remember what to do when a is negative?
You just like divide by -1.
You can either multiply both sides by -1 or divide both sides by -1, or most people just say, well, it's just going to be the opposite answer. Instead of -2, it's going to be. But yes, algebraically, what you're really doing is multiplying both sides or dividing both sides by -1. You want to see the ugly way of doing it? Let's add a to both sides. Now we get -2 plus a equals 0. And now let's add 2 to both sides. A equals 2. There, I did 1 step in 3. Yeah. On which, are you talking about for homework? Or are you talking about for on the paper? All right, I'll look at it in a second. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Extraneous solution, it can't be 0.
Is it just x minus 2?
That is the common denominator, x minus 2. There's only one denominator up there, therefore it's got to be the common denominator. So in this one, the common denominator is x minus 2. So we're going to multiply everything by that x minus 2.
When they think you should do
When Nathan gets it, we know everyone gets it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
Nathan, when who gets what? Hey, that's mean.
you want me to see what you get it?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, what Tristan gets it?
Why is that mean and yours isn't?
Yeah.
Because I get bullied by him 24/7.
That makes it okay?
Yeah.
So as long as I do it 24/7, it's okay.
I just get used to it.
All right, what cancels?
Everything.
Okay. Distributive property?
2x. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, 2x minus 4.
Nathan, which one we moving? The 3x or the 2x? Always move the small. Now, can you move it? Can you move the 3x?
Yeah.
Why do we not like to move the larger one?
Because it makes it harder.
We wind up with a negative, and there's more chance of screwing it up. We move the smaller of the two, we won't have a negative. We might have a negative answer, but at least for that one step, we don't wind up with a negative. So we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. What do we get, Nathan? The very next step. If I subtract 2x from both sides, what would you be left with? Minus 6 equals. So I'm going to recommend that you. I'm going to recommend instead of doing what I'm doing, you write minus 2x, draw your line. So I'm saying it's a little bit easier. So x, keep reading.
X minus 6
equals
x.
2x minus 2x is 0.
Yeah, so yeah, 0. But isn't it? No, no, because it's also minus 4.
See what I'm saying? You don't make a mistake if you write that step out. Okay, so I'm gonna recommend you write that step out. For other people, maybe you don't need to write that step out.
Maybe you're just built with it.
Aiden, last step. What are we doing to both sides?
I forgot the step.
Okay.
I don't know, a step above it, but I don't know the step.
Okay. So what do we need to get rid of to get x by itself?
Get rid of 6.
Okay. How do you do that?
Cancel it out.
Agreed. But how do you do that?
Divide it.
Because it's attached by multiplication.
Oh, you do the step. Yeah.
How is the 6 attached to x?
It's attached by subtraction.
How do you get rid of subtraction?
You subtract.
You don't get rid of subtraction by subtraction.
You add.
Now, smart kid would say, Mr. C, yes, you do.
Yeah, well.
I'm going to subtract negative 6 from both sides, but guess what that really means? It means add. Right?
Okay, so we're adding.
So he could have still recovered and said, well, I'm subtracting a negative 6 from both sides.
I was getting
But he
there.
just wasn't thinking. That's okay.
I was getting there.
What?
Yeah.
Did anybody catch that? What did we just find as the answer? Well, no, we found 2 as the answer, but when we look up here to see what it's the extraneous solution. So you ready for this? The answer is actually
No solution.
no solutions.
So we did all
So
that work for that.
someone who was it? Was it Josie?
It was Hannah.
Hannah? Right? Somebody asked at the very start something about all my X's went
Oh, wait,
away.
no, that was me. I thought
Right.
you were talking about what you just said.
Here is a case. You want to see why this really happens? Look up here. We didn't factor. If we had, and you shouldn't at this stage of your algebra career, if we had factored this, what goes into 3 and 6? So if we had factored this out, you'd be left with x minus 2 on the top, but there's an x minus 2 on the bottom. We're told that equals 2.
So 3 does not equal 2.
And 3 does not equal 2.
Oh,
Unless one.
That's more of an algebra 2 problem. So in
we
algebra
just
2,
did that.
well, in algebra 2, you're expected to always factor first.
Why can't we do that now?
You can, but very rarely will we be able to factor. Okay. All right. Could we get an infinite solution one? What would that look like? Okay. So be careful. We could still get an in. Let's see what that looks like for extraneous solutions. Okay. So it looks like the same problem, right? Except instead of equal 2, it equals 3. Now, like I said, if we factor, you'd see that immediately get 3 equals 3. But if we did not factor, right? If we did factor, please pay attention. If we didn't factor, we would do the same steps. Same things would cancel. We get this, and we get the classic when we subtract 3x from both sides. We get the classic, hey, all the variables will step. So I just still want to point out that when we had done normal equations and we had solved and we got no solutions, we did see that the variables dropped away. That doesn't happen for no solutions, but what happens is you get an answer and it will match the extraneous solution. But for infinite solutions, you do get the clause that, hey, look, we subtract 3x from both sides and we get some number equals itself. Okay. I don't know how many there are like this tonight for homework, but there's probably one or two, something like that. Okay. All right. So you can get infinite solutions.
Can we go over a problem where it's like x minus 2 equals?
By the way, guess what the answer really is? All real numbers except 2. So technically it's not infinite solutions. Technically it's, most time we say all real numbers except 2. And there is a symbol for all real numbers. Anybody know? We get really lazy in math. Here's the symbol for all real numbers. It is an R with an extra slash on it. That means all real numbers.
AI.
And further, we don't like writing the word except. You put a big line like this. You say all real numbers such that x does not equal, what's 2? And that's how we would write the answer.
Sound like you were
Do
cheating.
you need to write that? No, I'm just pointing out that we're lazy as mathematicians. Yeah.
Can we go over one where it's like maybe like 3 over 5 or something? So like
So you're gonna have to give me some help here. You tell me what to write.
like it would be like 6 minus x over like 4 minus x equals like 3 over 5.
Okay, everybody look at the board. What's the common denominator? No.
5 and then parentheses 4 minus
The
x.
common denominator is 5 times 4 minus x. That's what I got to multiply everything. So I need to multiply this, and I need to multiply this. Okay? What cancels?
4 minus x. This is already 5 plus 4 minus x.
What is it?
You wrote 4, it's 5.
Sorry.
I get a good
What cancels?
for 5.
Can you take it from there?
Yeah, I
Just remember that's the distributive property here. 5 times that,
yeah, it would be.
and then 3 times that.
Okay.
No solution.
Is this a no solution one?
No solution. Do you know exactly how many no solutions are?
I mean, I can look.
There's a lot.
I don't think there's a lot, but I'll look for you.
Daddy, Joe.
What?
Everybody look at the clock. What's it say?
We got like 15 minutes.
I can't read it.
Why don't you, well, if you can't read that one, read
No,
that
I
one.
can't. I'm trying to read this one. Can you
It's
just
12.
take this off?
What is anything to the 0 power except for 0?
1,
1 2 to the first power is
2.
1 2 is 12. 1 2 12 is the hour. It is 12:01.
That's actually really simple.
It is.
And then
The minutes go too quick to do calculation. But
Just a second.
did I say minutes?
Yeah.
Seconds. What page is homework on?
305.
Thank you for sharing.
Did you fart again? I'm scared. I will be.
You will find out. What did I give you? 1 through?
7 through 11.
I gave you 7 through.
20.
7:20.
7 to 11.
Yes, there are quite a few that are either no solution or infinite solution.
Ew,
There are 4 no solutions and 2 infinite solutions. All right. What I was trying to get you to do was to look at the clock, either one, and see the fact. Listen, please. Look at the clock and determine that we have a lot of time left for lunch. So what we are not going to do
we're gonna go get lunch.
is go to lunch early or just sit here and wait for the time to run out. What you're going to do is get started, and that way I can assist anyone that's having issues with doing this stuff. Okay? You have your homework in front of you from last night.
Yeah.
You have your homework from last night. Take those common denominators. If you want to do it on a different page, you can. You don't have to. Right? If you want to put it all on one page, that's fine if you have room. And do exactly what we just did in class.
So do we have to turn in the one we did last night?
Tomorrow you're going to turn in whatever, all of it together in one little packet. If it's multiple pages, it's fine. If it's one, that's fine. All right.
None that side.
If it's none, then I will put in 2 zeros for your noneness.
What do you want us to do with the,
All right, Julie and Haley, any questions?
Who's Becky?
Julie. Julie, Haley, any questions?
I think I'm good. I think.
All right,
I don't
cool.
know.
If you run into any problems, send me an email or chat and I will help you out.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. See you later.
See ya.